In today's lesson, we are going to do a guided drawing of a T-Rex and with a landscape background. We're going to be using shapes connected together to build the shape of our T-Rex, and we're going to be using line and shape to create the things in our background here. We're going to be adding some texture to our T-Rex here, as well as other parts of our landscape in the land here and in our mountain. We are going to create some values. So in my picture here, I used some areas where I colored darker, or I used a darker color to show a shadow. So we're creating darker values here. In the smoke clouds up here, I used a harder pressure on the edges next to my outlines with my black crayon. As I colored out, I lightened my pressure and created a lighter value in the center. That creates a puffy effect to these clouds. So again, I went from dark, hard pressure, and as I colored out, I got a little bit lighter so that it goes from dark to light with the pressure of my black crayon there. I've also blended multiple colors together in different areas where it makes sense. We went from red here to orange, then we've got some tan, and then some darker brown. In all of these areas where I colored multiple colors on top of each other or blended them together, I started lightly with the darkest color to create the texture. So for here, this one was the dark red I used here, or in the mountains this dark brown. I added that first, lightly, leaving space in the paper open for the next middle and lightest color. Up here I took my lighter tan and I pressed harder to fill in all of that space in the rest of my mountain, creating a little bit of variation there. Down here I used my middle color, which was my green, to add a little bit of depth in there, but then I decided that that was too similar to my T-Rex. I needed to make my background more different from my T-Rex so that he would stand out. So I blended this yellow, this bright yellow, in with those colors as well to give a nice lighter, brighter feel to the ground to make it much more different than my T-Rex. That is called contrast. So again, we've got our foreground, middle ground, and our background of our landscape here. Our T-Rex is our subject. We want to make some contrast to make sure that our T-Rex stands out. That's just a fancy word to make sure that he's different from the background, so be careful when you're choosing your colors. Pay attention to the pressure of how hard or light you're coloring with your materials. Try to blend some colors together. In the sky, I blended my light, my gray or my light black with light pressure of the black, and my blue here to create my smoky sky. Blended colors together in the ground and in the T-Rex. Use your marker for anything that you want to have an outline or a detail that's going to stand out really good. And you can fill in some things with marker, but just know that it is not going to create the same texture effect as the crayon or the colored pencil. So please make sure that anything you're trying to do with the texture rubbings, that you do that with your crayon or your colored pencil. I hope you enjoy this type of landscape. To start, make sure that you're holding your pencil farther back on the pencil, closer to the eraser, so that it is easier for you to draw lightly. We're going to want to draw lightly today, as we are going to be using our shapes to build our shape of our T-Rex today, and we want to draw lightly. So first we're going to start with a nice oval for the body of our T-Rex, and we want it to be kind of big toward the center of the page. We want to leave room for the legs, the head, and the tail to fit all within our page. If something gets cut off, I would not worry about it. So once we've got that slightly upward turned, angling up just a little bit, that oval. We're going to add another oval, so we can imagine now that the neck is going up this way, and we're going to have our head turning, looking back behind him. I'm going to have another kind of oval there. And you might need to adjust the sizes of these things as you go. That's why we're drawing lightly. We can always change things. Next, we'll go ahead and attach that to the head here, the head to the body with the neck here, so it's going to be turned this way. The head is going to be turning and looking behind. We can adjust the shape of the head to look a little bit more face-like in just a little bit. And we'll want to connect that down. So we've got sort of an angle here, connecting that, and we can adjust things as we go. We'll come back to this a little bit more, back and forth, change things as we need to. We're going to add the tail going this way with sort of a long triangular shape, so notice that it's wide here and then it's going to get smaller. So I'm going to have my tail wrap around this way. Your tail could do something different if you want. So thicker as it touches body and thinner as it goes around. It's okay to have sketchy lines for now. We're drawing them lightly. We can always go back in and clean them up after we have outlined. Next, we're going to sketch in the legs. So we have one leg here in the front, so we'll attach where these big muscles would be here. So we'll kind of indicate where that's going to go. And he's got a lot of different muscles. His anatomy is different than ours, so we might be a little tricky. We're going to kind of angle this one down just a little bit. And it's going to come this way, and then it's going to go back down. Oh, my leg started to get cut off. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Can always add more detail in the other one to make up for it. So we can, again, we'll go back and adjust that again in just a second. We've got it sketched in, and now this one is behind the body, so we're going to have part of it kind of hidden back there and coming out from behind. Again, we'll have it kind of come down this way. Triangle shapes for the toes. And again, so it might be kind of rough right now, and that's okay. We're going to go back and adjust it as we need to. The arms here, make that a little shorter so we have a little bit more room for our hands. Little arms for our T-Rex. I have one kind of coming out from the front here. And T-Rex arms are very short. I'm just going to do it real simple here. Two little claws coming out. And then another one here coming out from this side. Alright, now we can go back in and start cleaning this up. So we're going to adjust the top of the head here to have a bit of a bump for where the eye is going to go. There might be a little bit of a ridge there above that eye. You can kind of adjust the shape of the snout here. You might have another little bump where his nostril goes. So maybe he's got a little bump for that nostril. And you can make things longer or shorter depending on how you feel like it needs to change. Maybe his snout needs to be longer. And we're going to add a little bit of a curve here where the edge of that circle was for the jaw. And a line down this way to show the crease of his neck. I'm going to adjust this a little bit down that way. Just keep playing with those lines until you like them. And we're going to add his eye in here. Just kind of a football shape, oval, pointy oval. mouth in here now, so I'm going to kind of go Now we're going to show some texture in our T-Rex here. So what I have found was a bag that has some texture to it. It's got a sort of pattern in here, and you can find some different items in your home and test out what kind of textures they are. So just to give you a quick example here, if you lay your paper down on top, just a little scrap piece on top of the object, and when you take your peeled crayon and go over it like that, you got to hold it still, then you'll see the texture that it will create. And you could test out a few items before you find the texture that you like. So I'm going to take my bag here, and I'm going to put my paper on top, and I'm going to pick my colors that I want to use. I'm going to start with this brown, and I'm just going to do a light, I've got to press down enough to see that texture, but I'm going to be layering a few colors on here together to create some different values. So I'm just going to do a brown kind of layer over most of it, and you might need to move it depending on how big your texture item is and how big your paper is. Each time you're drawing, remember you're holding the paper still on top of that texture plate. Whatever it is that you've chosen, you could do the bottom of a shoe, it could be another, just anything. You can look around your house, whatever you've got. It could be a leaf, be anything. If you can feel that texture on the surface of the item, it will probably make a texture on your paper. Now that I've got a little bit of brown laid in there, I'm going to work on adding some shadows in there like we talked about. I'm going to use a little bit of red to go in here, and lightly on the bottom edges of things I'm going to put where the light would not be as much bottom part. So underneath his jaw, I'm going to shade some of that in there under the neck crease that we created, underneath the bottom part of the tail, maybe underneath this part of the leg. You can use whatever colors you want to color in your T-Rex. because of course we don't really know what color the T-Rex was. So you can use your imagination. Maybe practice on a separate sheet of paper some different blending combinations to see what's going to look good before you put it on. I'm going to go ahead now and just do a layer of green on top. And notice that I'm keeping it on my texture plate the whole time. You can take it off, whatever you think is going to work for you. You can do a layer of texture and then a layer of solid and see how that looks. Experimentation is good. Got this texture over the skin of our T-Rex. Finish this up, and we'll move on to the background and middle ground in just a moment. Now I'm going to use a different color or a different texture for my grass. So I found something with these vertical lines on it that are raised. And we're going to see what kind of texture that's going to make for my field down here. And again, we can be creative with what kind of colors we think it should be. It might not necessarily be green grass. You can decide what color the plants were back when this dinosaur was alive. What I'm doing in the smoke of my clouds, my smoke clouds, is I did a light gray over the whole thing, and then I'm taking my black colored pencil and I'm coloring darker next to these outlines, and I'm fading that color out so that it makes a smooth transition on the edges, and it gets darker on the edges and lighter in the middle toward there. So wherever you did these texture lines, kind of fade that color out from that outline, and that's going to help make these clouds look puffy. It's going to give them some form.